there, Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk Bounty video. And in this video we're going to be doing an update to my Finish the 96 series. If you're new to the channel, this is a series that I've done in the past where I go through all of the figures that Hasbro still need to make in the vintage collection to complete the 96 of the original Kenner figures, which you will see in front of you here in this lovely cabinet. Now, this video was requested by a Patreon supporter and good buddy of mine, Gary Moore. I do apologise, Gary, that's taken me so long to do it. And we're going to be doing it slightly different this time. Instead of visual images and me ticking them off, we're going to go through the cabinet and look at each figure. And I'm going to be going through which figures still need to be made and which figure you can get in the meantime as like a placeholder until Hasbro get round to making it in the vintage collection. And for all of those figures that I do mention as placeholders, I will leave links in the description below so you can check out current prices and things like that. And if you do happen to use those links in the description below, then it's a great way of helping out the channel. With all that being said, if you do happen to enjoy the video, hit the like button down below, subscribe if you're new, and let's get straight into it. Okay, so starting on the top row there, we have Luke Skywalker. He has been pipelined. I would say that the best version that we currently have of him is from the Resurgence of the Jedi Legacy Collection Battle Pack. Quite an expensive set to get on the secondary market, so you might be better off waiting until TVC bring theirs out. Princess Leia, of course, we've just had. Great figure. R2-D2, we now have a clean version of him on card. Chewie, we already have him on card, and we're getting a new one next year, which is great. C-3PO, bit of a contentious one. We do actually have him in the vintage collection, but on an Empire Strikes Back card. It's a rubbish figure. It needs updating, but he has been done in the vintage collection, so we can tick him off. Darth Vader, we've got loads of Vaders in the vintage collection, but we now do have the definitive A New Hope version, which is great. Same with the Stormtrooper. And then we have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Han Solo, which again have been pipelined for next year. The Legacy Collection Ben Kenobi is probably the best version available at the moment, and Han Solo, I would probably say the vintage original trilogy collection version, which is a very, very long time ago. The Jawa, we do have him in the vintage collection, as well as the Tusken Raider, and we do have the Death Squad Commander or Death Star Commander, or whatever you want to call him. We do have him in the vintage collection as well. Coming along now, we have Greedo. We are getting Greedo as part of the HasLab Cantina, but of course he won't be on his classic original 96 card back. If you do want that card back, then of course you can go back to the vintage Saga collection version, which isn't as good figure as the one that we're going to be getting, but it's still on that original card back. I'm sure Hasbro will bring him out on that card back anyway. Hammerhead, he has been pipelined. The current best version of that one is from the Saga collection. Again, link in the description below. Snaggletooth, I guess we can say that we have had him in the vintage collection in the form of Zutton, so we can kind of tick that one off. On previous videos, I've had that one as a maybe, as like a question mark, because there is other versions of Snaggletooth that they could do to make that more accurate. Walrus Man or Ponda Baba, we have him in the vintage collection. We also have X-Wing Luke. We have R5-D4, we have the Death Star droid, we have the Power droid, we have Boba Fett on an Empire Strikes Back card, although he does need updating. We do have Leia Organa in the vintage collection as well. We do not currently have an FX7 on his own card back in the vintage collection. We do have him in TVC, but in a 3-pack, and that is just a repack of the Power of the Jedi line version. That's the one that I would advise you get. It's a great figure. Moving on to the Imperial Stormtrooper in his Hoth battle gear. We do have him in the vintage Saga collection once again, but not in TVC. Another one that needs updating, but that vintage Saga collection one is probably the cheapest way that you can get him into your collections. Next up, we have the Rebel Soldier. We do have him in the vintage collection. We do not currently have Bossk. We do have a carded Bossk, but once again, he is in the vintage Saga collection, very much like IG-88, who is standing next to him. Moving on to Luke Skywalker Bespin, we have him in the vintage collection, VCO4, and Han Solo in his Hoth gear we do not, but once again, he is part of the vintage Saga collection, I think. Lando Calrissian, we do have him. You might still be able to find him on a peg somewhere in your local store. And we do have this version of the Bespin security guard as well, which is great. We do have Yoda on his Empire Strikes Back card. We do not currently have the Ugnaught, which is crazy to me considering we had the Carbon Freezing Chamber playset. They did not include an Ugnaught. They had a choice of 2 from the Legacy Collection. They both come with their little white briefcases, so it's completely up to you which one you go for. They are different. and it's probably best you get both actually. Dengar, we have him in the Vintage Collection. He was the first ever, you know, Vintage Collection proper VC01. And then we have Han Solo Bespin. Once again, we have him in the Vintage Collection, as we do Lobot. Moving over to Hoth Leia, we have her in the Vintage Collection. She is VC02. And then we have the Rebel Commander, which we do not have in the Vintage Collection. So he is another one that we need for Hoth. The AT-AT Driver, one of my big wants in TVC. We do not currently have him. And we do not currently have the Imperial Commander in his black uniform. So that would be a good one to do, maybe with a General Veers card back. 2-1B, we do not have him in the Vintage Collection apart from in one of those 3 packs. But again, that figure goes right the way back to Power of the Force, I believe. So that is the version you are going to need. R2-D2 with his sensor scope, we have got that in the Vintage Collection. And we do not have C-3PO with his removable limbs with the net. Another one that I would love for them to do in TVC. There's many different C-3POs that you can get. Unfortunately, all the ones that come apart with a net are really, really bad. But if you want a vac metalized one from Return of the Jedi, I will leave a link in the description below to one. He comes with the Ewok throne, and that's probably the best C-3PO that you can get right now. Hoth Luke, we have him. We do have the AT-AT Commander, VC05. Again, probably one that needs updating, but we do have him. We do have the Cloud Car Pilot as well. And we do have that version of the Bespin Security Guard as well. Forlom or Zuckuss, we have him in a 2-pack, but it's not really a screen accurate one. The most screen accurate one, I guess, is from the Legacy Collection. Once again, I'll leave a link to him. But you can get Forlom in the Vintage Collection as part of that Bounty Hunter 2-pack, but it's based on the Kenner version that looks like that. Moving on down to Forlom or Zuckuss, whichever way you want to say it. VC10, we've got him in the Vintage Collection. TIE Fighter Pilot, although it's a rubbish figure, again, we have him in the Vintage Collection. We also have Admiral Akbar. We have Luke Skywalker Jedi. We have Princess Leia in her Bouche disguise. We do have a Gamorrean Guard and an Emperor's Royal Guard. We do not currently have Chief Chirper in the Vintage Collection, and the most recent version and best version that you can currently get from that is once again from the Saga Collection. We do have Logray in the Vintage Collection, and we have Klaatu or Woof in the Vintage Collection. We also have the Endor Rebel Commando in the Vintage Collection, although it's not that one in the green sort of jumpsuit, but still we do have an Endor Rebel Commando in the Vintage Collection. Weequay, we most definitely have him in the Vintage Collection. Great figure, that one. And this is one of the ones that we got most recently, Squid Head. Fantastic to have him in the Vintage Collection. General Madine, we do not have, and if you want a version of him, you'll probably have to go all the way back to the original trilogy collection. Pretty poor figure, but it's a good representation of the character all the same. Bib Fortuna, we do have him in the Vintage Collection, and we also do have Rees, which is great. Biker Scout, we had an updated version of him that came with the speeder bike, so we can tick that one off. Lando in his Skiff Guard disguise, we have him, we have Nin Num, we have Nikto, and we are going to be getting an 8D8 with the Jabba's set. So that is another one that we can tick off that we couldn't previously. Princess Leia in her Endor combat poncho. We can tick that one off, although it is a terrible figure, but still we do have her in the Vintage Collection, and we do have Wicket, and we do have the Emperor. Moving on down, we have the B-Wing pilot. It's Kian Farlander. We do have that character in the Vintage Collection, and we do have that version of Klaatu. We have 2 versions of this Han Solo in the Vintage Collection. We have the one with the trench coat, and then we have a new one without. We do have Tebow, we do have Pruneface in the line, or Oromarco, and we have the ATST driver. Rancor Keeper is another one that's a big miss from the Vintage Collection that they could just repack from the Legacy Collection. He's ready and waiting to do, but once again, they did not do that for the Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary. So once again, if you want that figure, you've got to get him from the Legacy Collection. Lumat and Paplu, we have both of those in the Vintage Collection, as well as the Luke Skywalker in his Endor poncho. R2-D2 is another contentious one. We do have an R2-D2 from Return of the Jedi, but it is the Bar-2-D2 one, the one with all the drinks and everything. It's not really a R2-D2 with pop-up lightsaber necessarily, not in the sort of design of this one anyway, but again, you could probably say that that figure does count. Romba, we do not have in the Vintage Collection. You've got to go all the way back to the 30th anniversary, I do believe. Once again, I will leave a link to Romba in the description below. Moving on to a Man, and the most recent version, or the best version that you're going to be able to get for this figure, is from the Power of the Jedi line. It's like a deluxe figure. It comes with like a skeleton and things like that. It's not really a great figure, but it's the best that we have. Barada we do not have in the vintage collection. We do have Kithaba. Again, you need to go back to the Power of the Force. I think he's in a 3-pack, and that'll be your Barada. Imperial Gunner, we do have him in the vintage collection twice, in fact, one from Rogue One, one from Return of the Jedi, so he is ticked off. We can tick off Han Solo in the Carbonite block, and the Luke Skywalker in Stormtrooper disguise. Anakin Force Ghost we do not have in the vintage collection, and I'm sure there's a Power of the Force version out there somewhere of this figure that I can link to. I do know that there's a Ben Kenobi Force Ghost that came in a mail away, and neither do we have EV-99, which is a bit of a travesty really, considering that he's also in The Mandalorian. The best version of that you're going to get is from the Power of the Force, or in actual fact this one right here, the original Kenner version, is probably still the best EV-99 that we have. Next up is Warwick, and he is the final Ewok that we're going to be talking about in this video, and he has been released in the modern line before. We don't have him in the vintage collection, and he was released in the Legacy collection once again in a battle pack, and he came with his glider, Luke Skywalker and an Imperial officer, so that's the only way that you're going to be able to get Warwick. Next up we have Lando Calrissian in his General Pilot's outfit. We do have him in the vintage collection. Moving on to the A-Wing Pilot, and this is another one that we do not currently have in the vintage collection. I would probably advise to go all the way back to the 30th anniversary for, I think his name's Taicho Selchu. That's a pretty good A-Wing pilot to have in your collections. Moving on to the Imperial Dignitary, or Sim Alu. This figure has never been made in the modern line, so if you want this figure you're going to have to go for this version, which is the vintage Kenner version. However, there have been other Imperial Dignitaries that they've released in the Saga series from 2002. Once again, I'll link to one of those in the description below if you want him as a placeholder. And then finally, the last figure in the cabinet is Yak Face, and of course we do have him in the vintage collection. We have him on a standard Return of the Jedi card, or you can get him on that Power of the Force card with the coin that came with the barge. So there you go then guys, that is a run through of the original 96. I've counted that we still need 23 figures to complete the 96. Most of those are actually from The Empire Strikes Back. And in that number, I have not included a C-3PO because, of course, we do have one, but we just don't have him on a Star Wars card. I did include the version from The Empire Strikes Back, though, and I also didn't include the R2-D2 there with the pop-up lightsaber because essentially we do kind of have that figure. But apart from that, we need 23 figures for the original 96. Finish the 96. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I want to thank everybody for watching this video, and once again thank you to Gary Moore for nudging me to do this video. I hope it's been of some help. We need 23 and the links are in the description below for placeholders until Hasbro get round to doing the figures that we need to finish the 96. Thanks for watching everybody. Thanks to my Patreon supporters and channel members. Your support means a great deal to me as always. Thanks for watching everybody, and we shall see you on the next one.